tell us what exactly took place, whether you accepted a bribe of 20 million shillings from Kamlesh Patni?
It is absolutely not true. Amimo, what was happening in the 90s is that I and Professor Anyang' Nyong'o were the ones who broke out this issue of Goldenberg. The system then focused on me. And let me tell you, some of us have had to pay very high prices. At the personal level, it was a well-orchestrated campaign to silence me on the issue of Goldenberg. You will remember that the Commission of Inquiry by Bosire, despite whatever other shortcomings it may have had, their report was there, and Mr. Muite wasn't mentioned. There is no truth in it. It may be possible that some individuals around me may have gone and gotten money from him on the basis that he was going to intervene, they were going to intervene. It isn't true. In fact, shortly after the time he says that he gave me that money, I was the lead counsel on behalf of the Law Society in mounting a private prosecution in the Goldenberg matter. So there isn't an iota of truth
to that. Let me just follow up on that, because if I remember correctly, the Law Society then said they found that you or persons associated to you had accepted a check of 15 million shillings and cash in 5 million shillings. So for purposes of clarity, because we know what a drain corruption has been on this country, could you please clarify that for us?
That is what I said earlier. Individuals around me may have gotten money. Mr. Muite did not get any money whatsoever. And in fact, Mr. Patni himself eventually accepted that he never gave me any money.
Mr. Mudavadi, you're also linked to Goldenberg, and more recently in 2010 to a cemetery land scandal. You've been investigated in the case of the cemetery land scandal by Parliament. Could you just clarify these scandals and your role in them for us?
Let me start with the Goldenberg issue. The Goldenberg issue is an export compensation scheme and a pre-shipment scheme that was abused. And I was appointed to the Treasury in 1993 when the Goldenberg scheme was in force. So what did I do? I terminated it. And what were the steps that I took to terminate Goldenberg? First, I got Pricewaterhouse to set up a special audit on the transactions surrounding Goldenberg, which they did. Consequent to that, my time in Treasury, I was able to close several banks that were associated with the abuse of the pre-shipment and pre-export scheme. I got this out of the way. Many banks had to close. We even changed the law regarding the central bank vis-a-vis the question of what central bank can do and what it cannot do. The law was changed during my tenure, and this was to close the whole chapter of Goldenberg.
Ms. Karua, you want to say something?
I just wanted to remind the Honorable Prime Minister that one gets suspended not because there is concrete evidence against you, to facilitate investigations. And therefore, in the case of the NHIF scandal, there was concrete evidence of irregular payments to health service providers.
You remember that the CEO of the ministry himself was actually suspended in that particular case, and even the board was also suspended.
But not the minister?
The minister, because the minister, there was no evidence linking the minister with what had happened in that particular corporation. If there had been, I would not have hesitated to suspend the minister to facilitate investigations.
It is true that in IPPG, we had agreed during that time that the opposition shares appointments of the Electoral Commission. That sharing was to political parties. In 2007, parties had metamorphosed in Parliament, were not recognizable. Mr. Onding was part of the NAC, original NAC. So they were basically members of the party in government, but they'd broken away to the Orange Democratic Movement born out of the referendum. So in a nutshell, there were no parties to consult except KANU, and KANU mandated by the president, I consulted KANU through its then leader, Uhuru Kenyatta. But for the other parties, because we didn't have anybody to consult, we consulted members of parliament of each of the areas where we were appointing new commissioners. And I remember consulting with members from Nyanza and even talking to Honorable Raila at the back there in Parliament when I told them they could not just be given two, because he was asking me whether they could get two commissioners, because there was no party to give. So we consulted, and it's me personally who consulted members of Parliament virtually from each area. And that is why up to date, even if you look up through the newspapers, none of the commissioners is condemned by the members of their area because they had consented to their appointments.
Mr. Odinga.
I just want to jog the memory of my sister. NAC was a coalition. NAC was not a political party with individual membership. We were there, for example, like LDP. My sister belonged to the Democratic Party. There was Ford Kenya. There were several other parties in the NAC coalition. And we were there as members of the Liberal Democratic Party, which was a partner of the National Alliance Party of Kenya. She refused to recognize deliberately. She says not that the party did not exist. LDP existed, but she refused and just said this executive has the sole authority under the Constitution to appoint the Electoral Commission. So we were the player appointing the referee, and that is actually what ended up with the kind of mess that we ended up with in the country.
Just very briefly to say, the record is there for everybody to see. LDP did not have members in Parliament. Those are the parties that came together. Even DP had no members. We all became members of NAC. It is only in 2007 where, through an amendment to the Political Parties Act, we've been able to call ourselves NAC Kenya, while we entered through PNU. That arrangement was not there in 2001, and blaming the Electoral Commission for the mess when it is parties and their henchmen who rigged is trying to rewrite history.
Thank you. Mr. Dida.
Thank you for your sincerity pertaining your questions on integrity and leadership. But did you expect a thief to tell you I've stolen? And number two, pertaining the Electoral Commission and the mess. If things did not go right and the elections were rigged, was it wise for the honorable member, the Prime Minister, to accept the results and sign? If you are not happy, you involve the international, the UN, and there is the best way of doing it. When all that has happened, and then he accepts to partner with that government that he claims to have stolen, is he not guilty to bear everything that has happened?
Mr. Odinga?
Well, my brother lives in Kenya. I don't know whether he's just come in. You need to know that there was an mediation by the international community, which ended up with signing of an accord to end the violence which was going on in the country. But it needs to be also put on record here that we did not go to the court because the judiciary was very partisan. All those judges had been appointed by one of the players. The Chief Justice was all the times robed, ready to go and swear in the president. So we did the best that we could do in the interest of peace in the country to compromise and agree to sign an accord that facilitated power sharing and made the country move forward.
Mr. Dida.
The idea by Kofi Annan was just a suggestion. Is it wise you agree and you sign, you are part of the government? A wise thing was, how do you accept? Where will peace come from? The dead are not yet buried. There are so many people who are displaced. And you are not, up to today, people just say it was stolen. The wise thing was, I will not accept these results. It has to be redone, and the international world has to be, I'm a Kenyan, I was born here.
Would you like to
just a
respond?
witness.